Whew. Okay, thanks for coming back, people, especially after that worst of 2018 list. Oh, that was a brutal list for a brutal year, but hey, it wasn't all bad. For all my complaints about how boring everything seemed to feel last year, there was still a lot of really good albums that did make their way out. I've got 20 besties to list off and about 10 honorable mentions. And I wasn't hurting nearly as much for stuff to talk about compared to my worst list. In assembling this list, I sincerely did not think that was going to happen. That was a pleasant surprise. I guess it's just that 2018 had so many other setbacks to it that it just felt mostly awful. So much mediocre stuff, so many artists that we thought were going to do well only to disappoint us, and even a fair amount of good records that still ended up getting major shit hurled at them regardless of their quality. Yeah, that was weird. Normally the video I worry most about making with these lists is the worst of the year because, that's just basically 30 to 45 minutes of good old-fashioned shit talking. But this year, I'd almost say I'm more worried about this video because I have a fair amount of albums on my list that I got a ton of shit for enjoying. I'm used to that kind of response to negative reviews, but when even positive reviews garner me a bunch of angry complainers, I don't even know how to respond to that. That just blew my freaking mind. 2018, the year where we truly couldn't have nice things. Same list rules apply, just like in the last video, and if you're seriously gonna complain on my choices for this list, you can officially get bent. 2018 mostly sucked. But here's a good collection of the stuff that didn't. Honorable mentions. There was a ton of really good metal that came out in 2018. Seriously, spoiler alert, this list is going to have a decent amount of metal showing up on it. So much so that it's unfortunate that this is the best spot I can afford for an album as good as this. Maybe I'm just not used to At the Gates being around like this. It's a weird feeling, isn't it? Hell, they're apparently working on new music even as we speak, and they've put out 2 albums in the last 5 years? God, I'm not used to ATG putting out so much good music this frequently. I'm used to the dark times. But hell, To Drink from the Night itself was a really fantastic record, and the fact that it's only an honorable mention should tell you what kind of year metal generally had. Good stuff. Case in point, yeah, metal had a pretty good year last year. God, I was hoping Pig Destroyer were gonna unleash another one on us, and the album they brought out was an absolute riot. Gritty, aggro, intense, and just topical and thoughtful enough to not toe the line into pretentiousness or betray the general ethos of their grindcore extreme metal roots. These guys delivered hard in 2018, and out of all the old guard bands who didn't deliver in that flaming dump truck of a year, I'm certainly glad these guys were still able to. Good lord, could you imagine what these guys would sound like if they'd been eaten by the Imagine Dragon? I feel like they would explode out of its stomach and write an awesome as hell gory song about it. Fuck yeah, dudes, Pig Destroyer rules. Another pleasant as hell surprise from last year, the second album from Dorothy is an absolute treat. A retro throwback that pulls off a retro sound effectively, as opposed to just taping an MC record to its face and going, "I'm a big boy now, aren't I?" A seductive, soulful, and at times even sinister sounding piece of 70s charm that absolutely crawls across your skin as you listen to it. Dorothy is an interesting as hell band with an interesting as hell frontwoman at the helm, and I sincerely hope they start catching on in a big way soon. I'd love to see these guys get more of the credit and popularity they truly deserve. Honestly, I'm probably being a little unfair to this album. I didn't get around to hearing this one until December catch-ups at the end of the year, and good lord, if I had more time with this thing, I could easily see this growing on me in a big way. I mean, y'all know I'm a sucker for cute shit, right? Well, this album was an absolutely adorable blend of indie rock and dream pop. that takes a few seriously twisted left turns. This is a record that plays cute, but it has a few Doki Doki Literature Club-esque moments that I totally did not see coming, and I loved every minute of it. A very creative record that blends a lot of styles together in very interesting ways. This band may be just a teensy bit out of my jurisdiction, but I sure as hell am not going to sleep on their next record. This was a delight. I warned y'all this was gonna show up here. Again, I originally just gave this album a super quick spin in January just to see if it was better than Mania so I could include it in that one joke from the original review. Like that was gonna be hard to accomplish, but strangely enough, out of all the albums I listed in that original joke, I kept coming back to this one over and over again. It's such an understated, quiet, and simplistically beautiful little piece of minimalism, electronica, and wonderfully blissful singing and guitar work from Jonathan Ng. 2018 was a year where so many of those specific elements were horribly misused or were being taken on by artists who had no place taking them on. But Vertigo is a terrific example of these methods put to exquisite and proficient use. I'm not explicitly anti-beat boops, people, but so many artists did them so poorly in 2018 that I just had to chide them for it. This record got that aesthetic right. Seriously, this was one you might have missed from last year. Please go back and give it a shot. It really deserves your time. Yeah, Father John Misty's new album is a triumph. A lot of what Father John Misty does is really goddamn good. For as much as I sometimes gripe about the guy, no one can deny his talent, his passion, and his absolutely unmatchable ability to rip your heart out of your chest, stomp all over it, and place it back into your body with such a weird and graceful brilliance that for all the hurt he's done to you, you can't help but thank him for the experience. God, it's weird. And while I did actually enjoy this one, probably a bit more than last year's also brilliant, if not crazy bloated feeling, pure comedy, honestly, this was just not a good year for Father John to beat the shit out of my heart again. Fuck, it was only a year since the last beating, and the rest of 2018 did a fine enough job crushing my spirits, thank you very much. I didn't need Josh Tillman putting his boot in as well. Good work, Father John. Now, can you please stop hurting me? Guys, seriously, I wasn't kidding about that AFI thing in the Fimi episode. For real, check it out.
All you have to do to make it sound like that is change the way you sing.
Neat, huh? Yeah, Tribulation is a great band. It's a shame I've been sleeping on them for so long. Wonderfully clean and elegant sounding goth metal hooks with some downright intense vocals and deliciously spooky lyrics. This is a must-listen album for anyone with a penchant in darker or gothier music. It's all the right kinds of dark and all the right kinds of light blended into a very sumptuous little black smoothie that looks like it's gonna be a harsh ride on the surface, but ends up going down exceptionally smooth once you give it the chance. If the likes of, say, Death Heaven or Liturgy are perhaps a bit too dense and heady for your taste, try this on for size. It's definitely a pleasant as hell piece of ultra spoopy goodness. Yeah, I mean, putting this thing on a best of 2018 list almost feels mandatory at this point. This is one of those albums that's getting so much critical buzz, I almost feel hacky including it on my list too, you know? It's like, oh geez, another fucking critic giving parquet courts a blowjob. How fucking original. Hey, Dick Lips, did you hear this album? With its infectious melodies, insanely tight instrumentation and production, and socially relevant lyrics that instantly make you snap and take notice of it? Of course it's on everyone's best list. It's really fucking good. You twat. The only reason it isn't higher on my list in particular is because it can be just a little bit pleased with itself at times, and the vocalist takes a bit of time to get used to, in all honesty, but it's still really goddamn excellent. It's an album you definitely should spin. Though admittedly, I hate that you can't play this album on Spotify without having those stupid videos play in the background. Like, there's literally no way to shut that off. I love this album, but holy shit, my data plan sure as hell doesn't. Man, I don't think a lot of people thought Skeleton Witch were gonna make it through that whole fiasco of their lead singer being an abusive tool bag, and they had to really push through some hard times before they could even reach the point where this album could be made, but I will be damned if all the hardship they went through didn't pay off in spades. This is easily the best Skeleton Witch album they've ever made up to this point. The guitar work is wild and creative. The music is overall much more bold and experimental and brave than on previous records. And I gotta give it up to Adam Clemens. He's an absolute force to be reckoned with on this record. Skeleton Witch almost feels like a completely new band with this release. And man, it's good to hear such a great story come out of such a miserable year. Again, this was good to hear. Good on you, Skeleton Witch. Really wish you guys the best in the future. But okay, you want to talk about a surprise in 2018? This was a big surprise. While I did hear a ton of buzz for Cane Hill in the wake of Smile, I was actually one of the few people who wasn't all that impressed. I mean, they were good as far as new metal bands go. God, that's a weird phrase, but you know, I heard better, I heard worse, whatever. I didn't think I'd really hear much out of them from that point, but with Too Far Gone, they massively stepped up their game. Slap me silly. I didn't think they had this kind of music in them. Intense, stomping, and just a raucously good time. This was an album that was blunt, colorful, and surprisingly thoughtful in places. Like, this might be one of the bigger surprises of the year for me. I had no idea Cane Hill had this kind of talent in them. But now that I see it, color me intrigued. I am officially watching this group. I hope we keep hearing good things out of them. Okay, so that's the honorable mentions out of the way. Settle in, people, because now we're getting into the albums proper. We have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. With one that is certain to piss at least a few people off. Yeah, remember that weird little spiel I went on at the beginning of the vid about not being able to have nice things? Here's an excellent example of that. While admittedly my opinions toward this album definitely did cool a bit as the year progressed, sure, I still think this was one of their most interesting and exquisite records to date. Loud, unhinged, angry, and intensely forceful. This record is the kind of comeback album I didn't even think this band was capable of. Too bad their fan base didn't feel the same. Or at least some of them, I guess. I don't know. Maybe this was just a strange case that happened to me personally. I don't know. I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but I got so much negative backlash for recommending this album. So many dipshit fanboys who never grew up past 2005 going off on one because it wasn't another fucking rehash of They're Only Chasing Safety or what the fuck ever. And no, this wasn't Under Oath as usual. But that's why it fucking rules. It's called evolution. It's called moving on. I understand if the changes of pace on this album weren't your thing and you just couldn't dig on it. Hey, that's fine. You're more than welcome to your own opinion, as long as you're nice about it. If you're gonna be an asshole dickwad who throws a piss baby fit at everyone just because your Hawthorne Heights t-shirts don't fit anymore, do it somewhere where I don't have to fucking deal with you. Good God. Like, this album was great. I'm gonna give it major props, and it really deserves more love than it initially got. But man, there was actually one nostalgic memory this album invoked. It was how fucking entitled emo kids could be at the worst of times. Oh, don't fucking at me, you prick. Okay, it's out of my system, I promise. You know, Here was an album that turned out to be a very nice surprise. Not that I wasn't expecting Miles Kennedy to do a good job. He always does a good job on whatever project he's working on, but he also has sort of this hired gun vibe to him. He's such a prolific artist, and he's always working with so many other groups that you can't help but sometimes wonder how involved he is in the creative side of his usual endeavors. So when I heard he was going solo, I was a little hesitant as to what we might be getting from the guy. But man, I was a fool to even begin to doubt. This album was an outstanding slice of acoustic Americana. The instrumentation and songwriting was absolutely intoxicating, and the earnestness and real genuine heart coming from Kennedy's frank and uncompromising lyrics just gave that record that much more oomph. This is one that'll tug at your heartstrings a bit, people. Miles has always been a very talented guy, but I don't know if any other project I've heard him in up to this point has drawn so much of his own personal raw talent out of him as this record did. I totally wouldn't mind seeing more of Miles on his own if he's capable of putting out more music like this. Oh man, this album destroyed. High on Fire was always great at delivering that high-speed, kinda doomy, stoner-flavored variety of thrash metal, but on this record, they've reached new heights of greatness. Seriously, between this record and the new Sleep album, Matt Pike just killed it in 2018. I sincerely hope he gets well soon. An absolutely stampeding record of dizzying highs, sludgy and satisfying lows, and all the god-tier level guitar work, bass work, and drumming we've come to expect from these guys over the course of the last 19 years. Hell, even the lyrics hit a special spot on this album, given that the whole thing is just one great big old tribute to the late Lemmy Kilmister. Oh man. Like I said in the last Fimmy, Lemmy would have definitely been proud of this one. In my opinion, at least, this was another shining example of how insanely good metal music was in 2018, and we got plenty more to list off. Yeah, I'm so glad this one ended up turning out as good as it did. I remembered getting hyped up for this after I stumbled across Drop as a random single back in 2017. As soon as I heard how frenetic and catchy this band was, I knew I had to keep my ear close to the ground on these guys, and I'm happy I did, because this record was just chock full of bangers. An infectious as hell new pop rock act out of Wales, this group's well thought out, while still blunt and forceful lyrics, along with their absolute skill at crafting infectious hooks and melodies, is a sight to behold. They're like if Garbage and Blondie got together and had a kid that listened to a ton of Bikini Kill and The Killers. It's great, an outstanding debut, and a very promising start to what I hope is a long and fruitful career. Estrons. Remember that name? You could very well be seeing it again in the future. Oh, this record snuck up on me. This was one I kept hearing hums and haws about after it dropped, but I never got around to it proper until end of the year catch-ups. I should not have put this one off. Holy hell, what in God's name was I thinking? I guess it's just because I caught a few Rivers of Nile tracks in the past and was just kinda on them. I figured the hype was just fans excited for a new album, you know? But when I got around to it, wow, the hype was so real on this one. This was some of the most exquisite tech death the year was able to put out. Some very intriguing instrumentation choices, i.e. some very nice uses of keyboard work sprinkled in here and there, and the already widely regaled saxophone shenanigans. A nice bleak sense of atmospheric existential dread, along with some outright explosive riffs and soloing. This record was an absolute godsend. It's not higher on the list because god damn do these guys need to find a better producer, but I'd say this album definitely makes an excellent case to get someone good in there as soon as humanly possible. This band deserves to sound better, and hopefully they get to that point soon. I'll bet this one is a bit of a surprise. My original review on this record wasn't necessarily the warmest, but again, albums like this are why I always warn people not to take my star ratings as carved in stone gospel. It's because, like literally everyone else on the face of the planet, my attitude towards things can change. And while I wasn't super hot on this the first few times I spun it, the more I came back to it, man, the more it grew on me. God damn, do these guys know how to do retro. Most retro bands these days feel like they're doing a vague impression of all the old bands they love, but these guys, with their fanatical devotion to analog mixing and their regaling devotion to the old 70s arena prog acts of yore, feel like they truly get it. They genuinely feel like an old band from that time period that you somehow just never heard of. Possibly because they were arrested by the FBI? A weird, wonderful, and fun as hell throwback to a groovier time. Just don't drink any Kool-Aid these guys offer you, okay? I'm serious about that. Look at these guys. Again, this was another record I didn't catch up to until catch-ups, and it served as a grim reminder as to just how bad I am at doing this. Holy shit. Wow, I am terrible. Why the hell do y'all watch me? Damn. But again, Rollo Tomasi delivered hard on Time Will Die and Love Will Bury It with a calm, mellow, and almost kind feeling sense of atmospherics juxtaposed brilliantly across some of the heaviest riffs and crunchiest throwdowns of the year. It almost feels like this record should be a lot darker than it actually is. Hell, this record almost gets black metal in places with how relentless the heavier moments can be, but it never dips full-blown into that style, like, not even close. If anything, this album is just post-rock with all the dials turned all the way up. Like, I mean, all the way up, too. All the way to the point where the speakers are about to blow and the neighbors just called the cops, and oh, it's fucking great. A gorgeous piece of experimental heaviness that really deserves more hype. Seriously, give it a shot. No, don't you even look at me like that. I told, nay, warned all of you there was a damn good chance this was gonna fall on my list this year. And here we are. Look, I don't care if people hate it. I don't care if critics hate it. Hell, I don't even care if my friends hate it. I straight up stole ARTV's car.
What the fuck?
I really liked this album. Like I mentioned before, this was one of 2 albums in 2018 that did the 1975 better than even the 1975 themselves could do. But that's not the only reason I like this album so much. The music is hooky and infectious, and the crystal clean production does help bring out that melancholy pop vibe they're shooting for, sure. But ultimately, it was the lyrics here that won me over. Some have said that they seem whiny and melodramatic, and you know what? There is a part of me that does get that. It isn't a pretty album. It's not the most philosophical or even vaguely deep about its topics, but it's raw, it's real, it's ugly and painful, and most importantly, vulnerable. I just felt this album from skin to core, and a band with 0 talent would not be able to pull that off. So, yeah, I genuinely think these guys have legitimate potential, and I thought this was a strong as hell first showing.
Give me back my car, you fat piece of shit.
God damn, Alkaline Trio, I am so glad you guys showed up in 2018. Compared to the last couple of years, especially 2017, I felt like 2018 didn't offer nearly as much great punk music. Maybe that's why I hated 2018 so goddamn much. Ugh. But yeah, Alkaline Trio dropped another gorgeous, pitch black, and outright demonic collection of punk rock throwdowns in Is This Thing Cursed? And while this record isn't as introspective or personal as some of their more recent works have been, the album they delivered here still hit with the force of a highway pile-up. This album felt almost like a return to roots record for them. It felt very From Here to Infirmary or Good Morning in places. It may not have been the most branching out style record, but you know, like I said, 2018 was really kind of hurting for good punk records, and the boys were able to deliver here yet again with one of their better records in ages, no less. This thing might be cursed, but it's a curse worth catching, definitely. And hey, I got nothing against curses. Y'all know how much I love cursing. Shit, fuck, asshole dick fiesta from Mars. Cursing's great. Fuck you. Yeah, this one was an outright gut punch. Architects had a hell of an uphill battle in making this record. And you know, No one would have blamed them if they wanted to call it quits, given their circumstances, but they decided to soldier on and make this album as a tribute to their fallen brother and comrade. And my God, the heart, soul, passion, and sincerity they poured into this record really shows. Man, you just gotta love an album that has everything in the world to prove, but actually does come up and meets all the challenges set before it. This record was outstanding. It's fiery, it's bold, it's defiant. It's a record that looks failures, setbacks, and even death square in the face and says, "You will not beat me. And even if you do, I'm pushing through as far as I bloody well can, so get the fuck out of my way." Just, how can I not have a mountain of respect for that? Bravery on this level is nearly impossible to fake, and Holy Hell has displayed it all with an amazing amount of strength and elegance. You didn't have to put this one out, Architects, but I'm sincerely glad you did. Again, like I mentioned earlier, great punk and pop punk in 2018 was hard to find, but if this counts as pop punk, I still don't know about that, then this is truly a great exception to that rule. Hell, this was a record that took the genre into darker, moodier, and at times outright disturbing and unsettling places, but it was an album that almost defined the year with its bleak tone, its foreboding melodies, and its illicit sense of dread, anger, and outright suffocating ennui. Woo, sounds like fun, doesn't it? Wee. But the instrumentation was also just so exquisitely well executed that even though it wasn't exactly a fun ride, it was one I just ended up having to take over and over again. It's such a rich, dense feeling album, especially for an album of this genre. Whether it's a bold hint at the next direction pop punk might be taking, or just a happy accident of experimentation, this album was almost impossible to deny, and I hope we hear more like it in 2019. God, I love this band. I love them so much. Like I said in the last video, 2018 was a year in dire need of bands from the old guard who could still deliver. And hell, sometimes when they even did that, people still gave them shit for it. But A Perfect Circle came back from a 14-year hiatus just to wow us all over again in a year where we really needed to hear what they had to say. While the music on this one was much more subdued, quiet, and even poppy in some places, the messages here they called out in songs like Talk Talk, The Doomed, and So Long and Thanks for the Fish were some of the most biting, unapologetic, and absolutely visceral pieces of social satire to come out of the rock scene. This band isn't the most prolific of acts out there, but for a side project that has a penchant for not taking themselves terribly seriously, they laid out some seriously great and meaningful music on this release. This album is an absolute riot. Now, hopefully that Tool album actually comes out this year, though I probably jinxed it by even daring to speak its name. Okay, so I was worrying way too much about that whole 4chan thing, right? That's right. Okay, cool. That's partially why I even brought it up. I was hoping somebody would put the bunk out on that theory. Anyway, yeah, this album, this was one of those kinds of records you didn't know you wanted and would likely have never thought to ask for. But man, with its ominous and absolutely pitch black themes and tone, a creative and skilled instrumentation, and the dense, thick, overwhelmingly evil aesthetic it's all cloaked in, Zeal and Ardor is a project I am so happy I got to discover this year, even if the honeymoon period was a little weird. While I don't think this is a project we'll be seeing a lot more music out of, I am very glad we've gotten what we've been able to get from these guys so far. It's all so strikingly good. Hell, I guess it just goes to show that sometimes the best ideas can come from the weirdest, strangest, happiest little accidents. And while this band may have started as a casual goof-off, the chops and musicianship here are anything but casual. Another pleasant surprise, and yet another great metal record in 2018. Ooh, this album. Oh, again, you want a retro throwback that actually understands retro as opposed to doing a rock coliseum style of impression of retro.
Some bullshit about factories.
Yeah, Kyle's got you covered, dripping from head to toe in classic rock vibes, glam rock suggestions, and a southern rock feel that almost borders on alternative country. Kraft feels deliberately derivative, but is still able to keep his own interesting and engaging spin on things. It's one thing to show reverence to the greats. I mean, anyone can and literally does suck up to David Bowie, as they should, but it takes a certain amount of skill, self-awareness, and full-blown raw-ass talent to be able to evoke those old names of yore without just seeming like you're 2 steps away from being a covers act. But Kyle rides that line so well, he makes it seem like it's the easiest thing in the world to do. A wild, world-worn, and bouncy as all fuck treat that should not be ignored. Oh, come on, you knew this one had to be coming. You had to have known. I'm Crash Thompson, and I will forever be on my anime bullshit. But Band-Maid is a name that people in the know have been talking about for years, and they deserve what little hype they do have in the West. And if I can help stimulate that buzz in any small way, then yeah, I'm gonna pour whatever gasoline I got onto this fire. Because Band-Maid fucking rules. Again, yeah, I get it if you're not into the gimmickier side of their music. Frankly, I don't know what the deal is with Japan and the Maid thing. What even is this? But hey, whether you're into the gimmickry or not, the music more than makes up for whatever indiscretions you may have. Raw and explosive, while still containing many elegant and beautiful moments, this is some apex level J-rock. Band-Maid is one of those bands that will get you into Japanese music, and this album just served as a means to prove that they don't have any intentions of slowing down just yet. An excellent record from an excellent band. You know, if you told me like 3 or more years ago that Judas Priest was gonna make my top 5 albums of the year somewhere down the line, I would have likely laughed my ass off. And oh god, I just turned the whole metal world against me by saying that, didn't I? Yeah, let me explain. I got love for Priest, people. I love Judas Priest. Hell, Screaming for Vengeance, British Steel, and Killing Machine are some of the best metal albums ever made. But people, from 1997 onwards, this band had a really rough stretch. Hell, even after Rob came back, they had a fair amount of trouble regaining that old momentum. I wasn't holding that against them necessarily. I don't think anybody was, but I think people just kind of gave them a pass because they're Judas Priest, you know? They're still out there. They're still trying their best. Damn it, cut them some slack. They don't have anything they need to prove. And of course they don't. They're Judas fucking Priest. Unlike certain other bands I could mention, if they wanted to just rest on their laurels, they could have done it. No one would have blamed them or anything. But instead of doing that, they ended up delivering one of their most amazing records in 28 freaking years. See, it's albums like this that make me extra pissed off about all the bands who phoned it in 2018. Rob Halford is 67 goddamn years old. If he can still bring the motherfucking thunder, then precisely none of you have any excuse. Listen to Metal Grandpa and rock the fuck out, you chicken shits. You know, I'm actually kinda glad I didn't get the chance to review this proper during the year. I dodged a hell of a lot of backlash over this particular record as a result. That seriously, I saw black metal fanboys up in arms over this record. But real talk, when is the black metal scene ever not being pissy and self-righteous about something? Whatever, the fact is, I really wanted to talk about this album when it came out though, because good lord, I adore what this record has done. Deaf Heaven has always been one of those bands that's debatable as to whether or not they even truly fit into black metal, as if anyone gives a shit either way. But on this record, they pretty much just went, what can I call it? I can't call it unblackened metal. That's an entirely different thing. Maybe anti-black metal? Is that a thing? Like anti-black. Let's call it anti-black. I feel like anti-black would be a perfect descriptor for this record because so many of the musical choices here feel like they're made to intentionally piss off true cult metal brats. The lack of distortion in the guitars, the slow, serene, wistful moments, all the beautiful piano work, and the narrative centered around a freaking love story? Love? In black metal? And it's not even directed at Satan? How dare they? But seriously, whatever you want to label this record, it does not matter because the music is absolutely spellbinding, almost hypnotic in its appeal, and this had to be one of the most creative releases I saw all year. See, 2018 wasn't all bad. See what I mean, people? Again, metal, at least in some corners, had a damn good year, and Ghost just continues to floor me with how creative, how eclectic, and how delightful their music can be. An absolute party from top to bottom without a moment of time wasted. I had a whole year and I didn't find out how to pronounce this. The fuck? Was an absolute romp. Ghost seemed to be moving in a slightly pop-centric, hookier, more listener-friendly appeal, which does admittedly suck in some regards because, you know, the more opulent, the more dark cathedral kind of vibe a lot of their earlier stuff has is something that they do very, very well, and there isn't much of that on this record in particular, but I like the fact that they just decided to take an album cycle and just have a bunch of fun. I mean, Ghost was already known for being bouncy, livid, and a lot of fun just as they were, but on this album, they really went all out. Fuck, they brought out groovy grandpa saxophone for this record. How can you not love that? God, while so many lesser rock bands in 2018 sold their souls to the Imagine Dragon, these guys sold their souls to Miles fucking Davis. That's how you know they're legit cool. Again, like I said in my last Fimi vid, why did you guys have to release this in December? Oh, I would have loved to have talked about this album. This record was so fucking good. Plus, it serves as the perfect indictment for all those spineless bands that got devoured by the Imagine Dragon in 2018. Like I said at the top of this video, I'm not against bands implementing electronica, trance, or even dubstep elements into their music. It can be done effectively. It's just that so many rock acts in 2018 didn't do it right. Most of them just wore electronica like a mask stretched over their face, and the only reason they were wearing it was for cynical, shallow reasons. Most of those bands, they were following a trend, and it shows. May is such a brilliant group that they can take almost anything and turn it into something beautiful, no matter what it is. What they do isn't so much music making as it is alchemy. This record was their most electronic fare to date, and it does sound like they got a lot of inspiration from today's music scene, but instead of being polluted by it, instead of being cynical about it, they took those trends and used them to create something truly gorgeous, engaging, and genuinely optimistic and hopeful. May is just so goddamn good at doing that with their music. I swear to God, one of these days I want to go more in depth about that. May is a band I have so much fucking respect for, and yeah, this record was insanely good. I loved it so much. This record was a light for me in the middle of a very dark year, and I am so glad that these guys decided to come back from the brink to give us more music. Again, 2018 was a year where we needed some of the old guard to step up and prove themselves. May took their sweet time doing it, but I'm glad they got there in the end. this wonderful record. Oh. And I know I'm likely getting more than a few scratched heads at having this album up so high. I mean, most of you didn't even hear this one, and hell, even a fair amount of you who did get the chance might be looking at me right now like, really? This one, Crash? For real? You know what? This was a me choice, okay? A lot of the albums I ended up picking for top dibs this year, I picked not necessarily because they had the best instrumentation or the most proficient production or even the most original ideas. This year, man, I just needed albums that could make me fucking happy. Albums that could restore my faith in humanity during times where there seemed to be so little to go around, I needed stuff to stave off the cynicism. And this album, for me personally at least, brought out a lot of joy for me. But there is still one album left. One album I'd say pretty much topped everything else in its ability to make us feel good about ourselves again. An album of positivity, an album of hope, an album of righteous indignation and obstinate rebellious freedom, an album that walked down the aisle with pride, took on all of its contenders and did it with 2 middle fingers in the air and a whole goddamn arena of people cheering it on. An album that you could almost say was like Stone Cold Steve Austin. Some years it's a close call for Album of the Year. Well, last year it was practically a 5-way tie, for God's sakes. But this year, nah. There was no contest. May came fairly close, but at the end of the day, I just knew. For me at least, this had to be it. Like I said, this year I ended up picking a lot of my favorites out of just how much hope they inspired in me and how much raw, unbridled happiness they produced, and there was just nothing else like this album in 2018. I knew Idols was probably going to grow into a very good band, but nobody could have predicted that it would happen this quickly. Only 1 year after Brutalism, the boys just went all out on this album. The lyrics are equal parts savage, dominating, and forceful, while also being very earnest, compassionate, and sometimes downright gripping in how emotionally charged they are. It's an album that can be equal parts silly on songs like Never Find a Man with a Perm or Graham Rock, equal parts fun on songs like I'm Scum or Danny Nedelko, equal parts poignant and relevant on stuff like Samaritans, Colossus, or Great, or even downright gripping on tracks like Rottweiler or June. It juggles so many different moods, tones, themes, and messages, all in the air, all at once, at the same time, without ever feeling schizophrenic, disjointed, or even missing a beat. It's fun and carefree. It has a lot of straightforward but still relevant things to say about society, but it never hits the completely downbeat, dour mood in order to deliver its very heavy message. It's a positive album. It's an optimistic album. It's an album that believes we're capable of changing things for the better and wants to encourage you that you have the ability to do it. It's an album that exhibits open and real earnest empathy and compassion, and isn't just a bunch of empty motivational poster patronizing and empty platitudes. Again, it was easy to lose hope in a year like 2018, but this record reminded us that we all have the ability to smash mirrors and fuck TV. That those shadows our father laid on us may weigh a ton, but we don't have to be carrying them for all our lives, and that God fucking damn it, Danny Nedelko is probably a fairly nice dude. This album just made me so happy this year. It really did. I haven't stopped listening to this thing since it came out back in August, and it still brings a big, goofy smile to my face every time I hear it. It reminds you that, you know what? We'll be okay. We'll figure it out. I'll shut my mouth. Let's hug it out. Here's to the U, the N, the I, the T, and the Y. Happy 2019, people.